out to Socrates. Socrates still trying to get the opening. Oh, Socrates! Whoa!
And there it is. The crazy gang have beaten the Culture Club.
Maggie Thatcher, can you hear me? Maggie Thatcher, your boys took a hell of a beating. Your boys took a hell of a beating.
Welcome to our latest module of Your Boys Took a Hell of a Beating new signing special. This is we have our new signing. You know, we feel like we should, I don't know, rather than contemporary times and some mad social media unveiling. You know, I think, you know, Brian Robson style. Let's get, you know, kind of a canteen table on the side of the pitch. You know, some terrible perms sorted out. You know, all of that very understated. Gary Thacker, our new signing. Welcome to Your Boys Took a Hell of a Beating.
Thanks, Steve.
New signing special.
Great to be on board, mate. Yeah, I think my days of having my hair permed are gone. I'm glad you didn't ask me to get out and do a bit of ball juggling as well, as I do over in Spain when you're a big signing. But yeah, great to be on board, mate. And I'm going to be talking about football with my mates, and that's the best thing in the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this one, this one is kind of geared up to take in, you know, signings of players throughout the 1980s, and we're kind of going for the ones that kind of fell by the wayside a little bit, that didn't quite, you know, the ones that got away, shall we say. I think we'd have to class them here. And there's certain players we're going to cover from Peter Beardsley through David Platt, Kevin Sheedy, Dave Watson, Anders Limpar, Ian Bishop, Clive Allen, Martin Keown, and Ray Houghton that we're going for, but not necessarily in the ways that you might expect. This is more to do with, you know, where football kind of diverged for them, and what might have been for clubs that kind of, I don't know, they drifted past on the blind side, shall we say. Gary, we're going to go with Peter Beardsley first. Signed by Manchester United for £250,000, not insignificant sum in 1982 for a relative unknown, from Vancouver Whitecaps in the NASL. Restricted to just one substitute appearance for the club, a Milk Cup second round first leg tie against Bournemouth, returning to the Whitecaps at the end of the season for much less than he was signed for. You know, Vancouver having a great time of it financially, because they'd sell him on to Newcastle just 4 months after his return for £150,000. In his youth, he'd been rejected on trials with Gillingham, Burnley, Cambridge United. But Old Trafford, you know, he signs in 1982. Peter Beardsley, the Manchester United player that never quite was, you know, but he was, because he did actually get onto a football pitch in a first team game for them. Peter Beardsley, the Manchester United player.
This is a fascinating subject, Stevie. I mean, you know, the players, when you sort of mentioned the players we're going to talk about, I thought, oh yeah, there's him, and there's him as well. Oh yeah, this guy as well. And it seemed to happen so many times. At Beardsley, he's an absolute classic example of a guy who sort of was rejected so many times, and yet came out to be such a fantastic star, not only domestically, also on the international stage as well, as a perfect foil for Lineker. I guess the problem, a lot of these issues we're going to talk about, is timing is key. Timing is key, and when the managers at the time see the riches they have, it's sometimes difficult to see the potential in somebody else. And I think Atkinson was manager at the time of Beardsley, not actually making it, but he had a sort of a rich stars there. I mean, obviously Beardsley was this sort of I don't know, proto inside forward, midfield forward, centre forward, wide player, whatever you want to call him. And when you got to play the players they had at the time at Man United, Steve Coppell, Wilkins, the great Brian Robson, you know, and Remy Moses and Arnold Muir and so many others, you know, it's difficult perhaps to say, here's a guy who could be great. I guess, you know, when you concentrated on the team that you have and the relative success that I were having at the time, although not so much later, it's easy to see why Atkinson, I let him go. But as you say, much to the great advantage of Vancouver Whitecaps' bank account, who made a bloody fortune out of selling him.
Somebody in Vancouver made an absolute packet.
Yeah, selling him twice. Sold him twice. Although not for so much money to Newcastle as they did to Man United. But I guess somebody decided, we're going to lay out £250,000. I mean, it's not an insignificant sum for a guy who made one substitute appearance for Man United's first team and never really got a smell aside from that. And, a substitute appearance is hardly going to be a fair test of a player's talent, as this occasion certainly proved to be.
Yeah, I mean, this is a point in time where Manchester United have broke the £1 million barrier in signing Brian Robson less than a year earlier. They'd signed Frank Stapleton for a significant amount of money from Arsenal. This is Manchester United going ping with the checkbook, taking a speculative effort on Beardsley. £250,000. It's still big money for a player with so little kind of experience of English football. But yeah, this is a Manchester United squad that he walks into with certain Norman Whiteside, a 17-year-old Norman Whiteside. I think we'd have to say he was at this point in time, as all commentators did. Stapleton very much at the peak of his powers. They still have an injury hit Lou Macari. The talented yet unreliable Scott McGarvey is still knocking around at this point in time, and a young lad in the reserves, as yet untried at first team level, by the name of Mark Hughes. And if he's wanting opportunities in the midfield, you've mentioned a few of the names. Whiteside, who is an option up front and in midfield. There's such an embarrassment of riches. Steve Coppell in terms of playing out wide. There's Alan Davis is still around at this point in time, that would go on to play in the '83 Cup final because of injury to Coppell. But in central positions, you're looking at, along with Brian Robson, there's Ray Wilkins, there's Remy Moses, there's Arnold Buren. Even Laurie Cunningham is brought in on loan this season. To play about half a dozen games, score a goal or so, but still not managed to make get a full-time contract. As you say, to work your way through that set of players is an unforgiving kind of challenge, really, isn't it?
It isn't. I guess Beardsley was an unusual type of forward player. He wasn't the guy. It wasn't you got. I thought he scored his fair share of goals, of course, but that wasn't his best talent. His best talent was being a foil for the striker. And even looking at the players, United at the time in the forward line, perhaps only Frank Stapleton would have been the guy who would have meshed with Beardsley. But I think if you're going to give this guy, you're going to sign this guy and then put. I'm sure he played in reserves many times and trained with the squad, and to put him in as a striker, as a pure striker. It was a lack of perception, I think, on Man United, on whether it was Atkinson or reserve team coaches' perception of what this player could be. Because, playing him as just an out-and-out forward never really tapped into his great potential. And I think, even looking forward after, could Man United have kept him and would he have flourished afterwards? I mean, I don't know, even the players they signed afterwards, after the era of players we just mentioned. I mean, we talk about, the likes of Peter Davenport and, there's someone from Nottingham Forest and Gary Birtles. I mean, they weren't that player he needed. They were almost the same sort of player. They weren't that player he needed. He needed that striker, the pacey forward who he could feed passes and play into positions. And I think, as I say, I think it was a lack of talent that basically foiled Beardsley at Manchester United. I think it was a lack of ability to perceive what his talent was.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to look at some of those names that came beyond Peter Beardsley at Manchester United being released by Manchester United. And interestingly as well, that 82-83 season, it wasn't that, despite all of that talent, they failed to score in 12 of the 42 league games that season. They ended up scoring 31 fewer times in the first division than eventual champions Liverpool. So clearly, there's a window of opportunity there that just doesn't. I don't know. Ron Atkinson is unwilling to open. This player who was kind of like a Kenny Dalglish style player, would probably prosper had he got his chance. But to go to some of those names that followed him, Garth Crooks came in for a while on loan. Alan Brazil was signed. Terry Gibson, Peter Davenport. All brought in a bid to increase goals. I think with players like that, it would have been so difficult to not imagine Beardsley eventually prospering at Old Trafford alongside Mark Hughes. Like you say, this English kind of way of playing two up front, 4-4-2. Maybe that was what kind of stopped this happening, because Beardsley, are we looking at a midfielder, or are we looking at a striker? You've got a team like Liverpool that embrace a player like that, but not everyone was doing that at the time.
It's a great call. The Dalglish similarity is a great call. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but if you're going to say, okay, what do you find Beardsley? Well, he ain't Rush. He's more Dalglish. And Ian Rush, I mean, the players of Ian Rush's calibre are few and far between. But a player of that style, played alongside Beardsley, was very much a tap, like he did with Lineker for England, would very much have suited Beardsley's style. And I think the players you mentioned, Man United signed Crooks in Brazil, Bertels, and Hughes comes. None of those are really that type of player. And I guess perhaps Atkinson did see what he was worth, what his talent was, but didn't consider it because he was wedded to that Anglo-Saxon 4-4-2 system that you just alluded to, Stevie.
Absolutely. I mean, remaining at Old Trafford, but moving on a little bit. David Platt is another that slips the net. On the books at Manchester United between 1982 and 1985. Eventually released in the February of that year, picked up by Dario Gradi at Crewe. He takes to senior 4th Division football at Gresty Road like a duck to water. Eventually snapped up by Graham Taylor at Aston Villa in February '88 to help them over the finish line for promotion back from the 2nd Division. And took the step from 4th to 1st Division absolutely in his stride. And by 1990, he's scoring that goal in that game against Belgium for England at that World Cup in 1990. David Platt, another one to slip the Old Trafford net. Again, maybe another player. It's is he a midfielder? Is he a striker? No one quite knew for a long, long time, and I don't think even he knew. But in a world where you've got Brian Robson perpetually injured, he is a young lad that is kind of a young version of Brian Robson, and he doesn't quite work out for him at Old Trafford.
Yeah, slip through Atkinson's fingers again. There again, as you say, the meshing of picking a guy up to take over a player who's in decline for whatever reasons, an injury certain foiled a lot of Robson's time, could have been perfect. I mean, we've chatted on another episode of this about the sort of the Keegan Dalglish heritage going through and how that sort of seamlessly works at Liverpool. But I guess there again, some places don't seem to fit with certain managers, and 3 years at Man United is enough time to get your chance if it's going to come. So you can understand why eventually Platt must have decided this ain't going to work, guys. And it's a massively brave step to go from Man United to Crewe and think, I'm going to use this as my launching platform to prove myself. And when he was playing at Crewe, as you say, he took to the Gradi's way of playing, who was quite an expansive manager at the time. It fitted in well, and suddenly his talent began to blossom. And it was a great move by Graham Taylor, as you said, to take him to Villa, where he proved he's not a 4th Division player; he is a top division player. And there must have been many Man United fans as he progressed at Villa, and they went on to great success with England as captain England. To have looked at Platt and thought, that was a risk, guys, let this guy go. Because it certainly was. And as you say, taking over from Robson would have been, almost, who do I need now to take over from Robson? I know, David Platt, and put that ship had sailed down the Manchester Ship Canal.
Indeed it did. I mean, it is fascinating to think that Ray Wilkins was sold to Milan. Around about 84, Arnold Muren, the end of the road for Arnold Muren's coming as far as Manchester. There would be a glorious Indian summer back at Ajax for him.
Just a bit.
So yeah, and again, this has turned into a bit of a Ron Atkinson bashing episode. I think letting Beardsley go, premature releasing of Arnold Muren, Peter David Platt slipping the net. It could be quite a side he'd had.
Yeah,
I mean,
what a midfield.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, you're looking at 85, 86 and the way that they blow the title, so emphatically, win those first 10 games, 10 points clear, everything's set up. players like Peter Beardsley and Arnold Buren that could have made such an impression on that side. Makes it, those fascinating kind of sliding doors. But yeah, David Platt, I kind of get it. 18, he's clearly wanting to spread his wings and play football, and has decided that's not going to happen for me at Old Trafford. I'm going to go and climb from the bottom rung to the top rung, and fair play, he went and did it. Moving away from Old Trafford, yes, there were other teams. Anfield next. I will not spur Anfield. Kevin Sheedy, who would go on to do so many wonderful things with Everton across Stanley Park as well. So it's half a mile away. He spent 4 years with Liverpool between 1978 and 1982, arriving from Hereford United, before being sold to Everton. He was edged out in a battle for the number 5 shirt by Ronnie Whelan, 81-82 in succession to Ray Kennedy, who kind of lost his way that season and was eventually moved on to Swansea City in the January of 82. Sheedy had actually made his first team debut under Bob Paisley, prior to Whelan doing so. And he seemed to be in pole position to win the fight for that berth, only for Whelan to prevail instead. Sheedy had made 5 first-team appearances for Liverpool. He scored twice, both in the League Cup games, one against Exeter, one against Middlesbrough. So, he'd made this very impressive, start to first-team life at Liverpool. Goal-scoring, introduction as well. He'd been on the bench in Tokyo when Liverpool played that iconic 81 Intercontinental Cup game against Flamengo, Zico and Junior and all of that. There's Kevin Sheedy amongst the substitutes. It's all set up. I think, I've spoken to Ronnie Whelan and I've been present at kind of like after dinner speeches that he's done and stuff like that. And when he speaks of his own debut against Stoke City, tail end of 80-81, they know that Ray Kennedy's injured. He and Kevin Sheedy are told to report to Bob Paisley. Whelan, I think he said it was the night before. It was the Thursday. It was kind of like the Grand National was. It was around about the time of the Grand National. Grand National was happening on the Saturday, so Liverpool were playing Stoke on the Friday night for that game. And Whelan makes his debut in it. And the day before, they'd gone out to Aintree for some of the other races, and Sheedy had kind of like he'd not drank, he'd kind of like preserved himself, and Whelan, thinking he's not going to get a game, went on the lash basically, only to find actually he's playing the following day. So he said he was utterly surprised. He fully expected it to be Sheedy that was getting the nod and playing. So even Ronnie Whelan himself felt that he was behind the pecking order in Sheedy. Yes, it changes. There's something. It's nothing to do with the lack of talent of Kevin Sheedy, but there's something about how Whelan fits into the side compared to Sheedy that makes this decision for Bob Paisley. Sheedy's kind of like slipping the net at Anfield.
I think this is a fascinating one. This is because I think, as you say, Whelan and Sheedy are really different players. They're both really exceptional players, but they're in different ways. And look, we discussed Beardsley and we got sold, and never really had a chance. And we look at, you think, well, I don't know if he ever would have worked with the players that Man United had or brought in afterwards, and perhaps with Platt as well. But I just think Sheedy would have been a Liverpool player. You can see him playing for Liverpool. He got the talent. He got the skill set that Liverpool's cherished, and a wonderful left foot. One of the best. I remember having a number of conversations with Paul Mack about the Holy Trinity, and Sheedy would have been just a brilliant player. What I say, wonderful left foot. The problem was there again the abundance of treasures that Paisley had. How many games would he have played? Would he have played ahead of Souness? Probably not. Samuel Lee, different type of player, but I could see if he'd have stayed, he would have been come through at Liverpool, because he's just got that sort of talent that Liverpool's celebrate and treasure and give a chance to flourish. But I mean, there again, understand a player who wants to play first team football, and he moved across Stanley Park and was massively successful at Everton under Kendall.
Absolutely. I mean, as you say, two different players in many respects. They shared the same reserve side. Ronnie Whelan could play central midfield. Sheedy wanted to play as a central kind of playmaking type of midfielder, but was more of a winger at this point in time. And Liverpool didn't play with wingers as such. But this is interesting that the rise of Sheedy. Sheedy kind of, it's fascinating just because he looks like he's so in the right place at the right time. With Steve Highway's Liverpool career coming to an end in the summer of 1981. But Highway in mitigation had not been a regular for a few seasons now. So that Highway type of player, if Highway had been still an omnipresent figure in the first team all the way up to 81, then you would have had a natural progression of Sheedy would have been the natural successor to Highway, but Highway had kind of fallen by the wayside, and that type of player. So it's interesting in how it's all to do with the subtle variations sometimes in a player not making it.
It's interesting. I mean, I guess in another Liverpool era, in the Toshak era, Sheedy would have been the perfect sort of ammunition loader. I mean, I remember Andy Gray and Graham Sharp in the playing for Everton. As soon as Sheedy got the ball, they knew the ball was coming in. That wasn't the sort of game that Liverpool were playing at the time. You say they didn't play with wingers, wide midfield players, but perhaps not wingers, as you say. And perhaps that's sort of stunting. But I think he could have made it central. I mean, look at Ian Callaghan, a winger who became a midfield player later in his career. I think Sheedy had that. Well, I don't think he did. Had oceans of ability, and it just sort of it never seemed to work for him. But at Liverpool, but as I say, the skill set he had, the ability, the composure, the sheer footballing ability, I'm sure he could have made it at Liverpool if there wasn't so many class players in front of him. And I guess that's perhaps a recurring theme. It's interesting to ponder. We're talking about 5 or 6 players here, 6 or 7 players here, who sort of didn't quite make it where they were when somewhere else had came back and came through. And it makes you wonder how many players who didn't quite make it, who could have made it, never had that sort of second chance, as it were, the second career, second opportunity to come through. But I think Sheedy is a classic example of somebody who definitely could have made it at Liverpool because he was just a brilliant player. And Liverpool had tons of brilliant players in midfield, unfortunately, at the time.
Yeah, I mean, timing being absolutely everything. Fascinating, though, to look at what might have been in terms of, this is a Liverpool when he does eventually leave in the summer '82. There's a midfield that's very much changing its shape, its composition. Jimmy Case has already left, Ray Kennedy in the January, and then you've got kind of like the arrival. There's been the arrival of Craig Johnston, but he can't, he's not assured of a first team place at this point in time. Mark Lawrenson's in there, who plays in midfield quite a lot in his first 2 seasons at Liverpool before Phil Thompson's injuries see him eventually drop back into the central defensive role that he's been earmarked for in the long term. There's Sammy Lee in there, but Sammy Lee's Liverpool career would start to unravel beyond the summer of 1984. Terry McDermott, who would very soon be sold to Newcastle. It's one of those where David Hodgson is signed from Middlesbrough for a lot of money that summer, but seems to struggle with the stepping up in kind of rarefied air, shall we say. It does to me, you look, and Whelan himself would have injury issues here and there. It is a fascinating one to look at, is that shift to Everton comes, but there would have been opportunities for him, for Kevin Sheedy at Anfield.
Yeah, I guess, if he looks back on his career and his decision to move to Everton, is it something I would say he regrets, but does he sort of ponder what might have been if he'd have stuck it out for another 12 months or so for the opportunity to come along? As you say, the Liverpool midfield was evolving at that time, and he hadn't got to displace Souness anymore. And he wouldn't have to displace Terry McDermott anymore. These players were sort of, But I guess when people's career opportunity comes, and and then Everton coming from, say, you're going to play first team football, it's a temptation. Kendall was doing really well at Everton at the time, and did so as well when Sheedy sort of moved there. So yeah, I'm sure it's something he thought long and hard about whether it's the right decision. I mean, who can say? You don't know what's going to happen, do you? So yeah, it is a player who I think I say from my point of view, I just think Beardsley was never going to make it at Man United because Man United didn't play the way he needed to play. So yeah, I think he would have made it. Liverpool would have just stuck it out another 12 months or so, and perhaps been had even more great success than he had at Everton. But there you go. It's only set one path in life at the time.
Yeah. He didn't do too bad for himself.
He didn't do too bad for Everton, that's for sure.
On the blue side of Stanley Park at all.
That's true.
Staying at Anfield, Dave Watson, another player who would go on to prosper with Everton eventually. He began his career with Liverpool, turned pro with them in 1978. Never managed to progress to the first team, despite showing rich talent in the reserves. And being highly regarded as well at Anfield. Supporter of the club as a kid. He'd been in Rome in '77 when Liverpool won the European Cup for the first time. But it was a thankless task to try and muscle into a central defensive position with Phil Thompson, Alan Hansen, Emlyn Hughes, and also Colin Irwin, knocking around for the entirety of Watson's time as a professional at Liverpool. Well, not entirely, but overlapping one another. Watson eventually left for Norwich City. It says a lot about his talent and his potential that a fellow First Division club were willing to move for him in November 1980. With no professional first team experience. He didn't go out on loan, didn't drop down the divisions. Another First Division club came in for him to say, well, you can play First Division football at Carrow Road instead. It is quite impressive. It was an initial £50,000, the transfer, but with add-ons that, an extra £50,000 here, an extra £50,000 there when certain appearance, markers were met. And I think it was about £200,000 that, he eventually cost Norwich. Another player that again, I suppose I was a bit more like Peter Beardsley. It's understandable why he didn't make the grade, but again, there's that kind of, near miss in a way. Phil Thompson would have injury problems from the winter of 82-83 that finished him as an option. And in the respect that by the summer of 83, Liverpool signed Gary Gillespie, who would become the third wheel in central defence behind Hansen and Lawrenson, but eventually play a great number of games for Liverpool himself. Dave Watson, in many respects, could have been Gary Gillespie at Liverpool had he kind of stuck out. And there's a man that went on to win a league title with Everton, went on to win 12 caps for England, narrowly missed out on a place in Bobby Robson's squad at the 1986 World Cup, did go to Euro 88. Dave Watson and what might have been at Liverpool.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to say is probably a little bit too simplistic, too deterministic, but I think there's a measure of it in a similar situation to Beardsley. This is a Liverpool team when Watson's trying to break through, whose centre-backs play are good footballers. Are skilled footballers with a ball that bring the ball out of defence. If I could just say, was Watson and Al Hansen? Was he Mark Lawrenson? Was he Phil Thompson? He wasn't. He was perhaps a Ron Yates, more of a set of defender than those sort of guys. And I don't think he fitted the template. Much as I said Sheedy may well have done, I don't think Watson fitted the Liverpool template so much. Could he have played a few games? Yeah, probably. Could he have ever been a number one starter? I just don't see it. It's not in that Liverpool team the way they played at that time. It's the right foot in the right shoe. Went to Norwich, did really well. I think became skipper for Norwich, if my memory serves me right, and did really well. And then moved to Everton for the best part of $1 million or so, and had great success there. There again, I think the position he was playing when he played for Everton, they had Ratcliffe playing as well alongside him, and that was sort of the player that it suited. He got the big stopper centre half, and you got the player who could play. But Liverpool didn't do that. They had basically two players who both brilliant defenders, but could play football as well. And I'm not sure Watson ever had that talent to be the guy who could bring it. He was for all his talent, he was no Mark Lawrenson. For his talent, he was no Alan Hansen. So I just think, it was a situation where, yeah, he could have been a squad player for Liverpool and he might have played 3 or 4 games a season, but I don't think he's ever going to displace those players who were ahead of him at the time.
Yeah, more a central defender of Liverpool past in a way.
Indeed.
A closer association to a Larry Lloyd type of
very much
central defender, and Liverpool had kind of dispensed with that. Remaining at Anfield for one more player, Anders Limpar, electric Swedish winger, signed for Arsenal in the summer of 1990, a huge catalyst in them winning the 1990-91 league title. A couple of years earlier, though, he'd spent a week on trial at Melwood with Liverpool, showing his potential on the Melwood training pitches. ultimately not to be offered a contract by Kenny Dalglish, who at that time already had John Barnes, he already had Craig Johnston, Ray Houghton and Steve Nicol, who were all more than adept at covering wide positions, as well as an up-and-coming Steve Staunton, who was a left-sided midfielder, would eventually play a fair bit of football as a left-back, an attacking left-back. This is an interesting one, is that, on one hand, he is a talented player that we simply could not fit in to that squad. But, over a period of time, very, very quickly, you've got the premature retirement of Craig Johnston returning home to Australia to help look after his stricken sister. Only aged 28, he couldn't have possibly budgeted in that loss. Soon Mark Lawrenson would have a career-ending reoccurrence of Achilles injury, which would mean Steve Nicol was less available as a midfielder and needing to play in defence far more than midfield. With the sale as well of Paul Walsh to Tottenham Hotspur, Limpar, again, timing and everything is everything in football. If that week's trial at Anfield comes 6 months later than it does, there's a player that Dalglish would possibly find it hard to turn down.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, how come Liverpool was so successful, Steve? When look at these guys go, how did you do that, boy? Limpar's a great sort of example of why a great talent for a manager would be to be a fortune teller. Who could have said? You quite rightly say, who could say that Johnston would have been sort of compelled to cut short his career at his height, pretty much at his height. Other players get injured. Lawrence, and you lose the ability to play Steve Nicol in the midfield role that you wanted him to be. And if, as you say, 6 months further down the road, Limpar looks a decent guy to sign, and obviously his talent was proved afterwards when he went on and was really successful. Not Liverpool's circumstance, shall we say, not necessarily in the top-notch team that it would have been if he'd have joined Liverpool that time. But time is everything, and Dalglish may have looked back and said, God, I wish I'd known that. Where's my crystal ball? Let's get that crystal ball out and give it a polish, and I'll know what's going to happen. But it's a difficult one, and I guess a player like Limpar, you look at him and he seems like what would Anglo-Saxon football fans would call a luxury player. When really, these players are what make teams successful. And I think he'd have fitted there again, a bit like Sheedy. You could see him fit into the Liverpool template. He'd got that ability. He'd got that sort of. He could play football. He was a great footballer, so he could have been creative for Liverpool. Yeah, and he would have worked. He would have worked in that midfield for Liverpool. Yeah.
Yeah, he could have been a crucial component for Liverpool going.
Definitely.
Bridging the late 80s and early 1990s. He certainly came back to haunt us in that 1990-91 season. I remember him ripping us apart at Highbury on a very painful Sunday afternoon. But yeah, they stuffed us 3-0. Moving across Stanley Park will not spur Everton. Ian Bishop, very cultured, excellent passer of a midfielder. He came through the Everton youth system, made just one first-team appearance for them at the tail end of 1983-84, 15 minutes against Manchester United on a day when another precocious youngster had stolen the headlines with a goal in a 1-1 draw. This was an interesting one because such a talented player that seemed to kind of alienate his managers almost. He would fight his way back. A similarity to David Platt in a way. He left Everton for second division Carlisle United via a loan spell at Crewe Alexandra. Something of a free spirit, maybe too much of a free spirit for Howard Kendall. He reputedly demanded that Bishop go and get his long hair cut, only to be given short shrift rather than short hairstyle. Yeah, it is thought to have accelerated his good into the next. That fascination that he was a star of a struggling Carlisle side that eventually slipped to back-to-back relegations. Back in the second division in the summer of '88 with Bournemouth, an absolutely incredible season that he had with them. It helped them to a comfortable mid-table finish in a very competitive second division in which both Chelsea and Manchester City are part of that year, as well as that burgeoning Blackburn Rovers side, and several others, that would go on to find things. A run to the fifth round of the FA Cup. He's signed by Manchester City in the summer of '89. Mel Machin, Manchester City just win promotion alongside Chelsea. Hugely popular, proven to be hugely popular at Main Road. Yet, despite a 5-1 win against Manchester United at Main Road, Machin is sued unseated. No consistency. The bottom of the first division. The potential of a drop into the second division is too much to bear. Peter Swale swings the axe and he brings in a certain Howard Kendall, who soon sells Bishop to bringing Mark Ward in part exchange. Ian Bishop and his interesting relationship with Howard Kendall and just what he could have provided for Everton. I think particularly in the kind of like the post-Kendall era where Everton start to struggle unravel a bit under Colin Harvey, 87 through 1990. He could have been such an interesting component to an Everton side in the late 80s.
This is a guy who seems to be perpetually looking for a home, looking for a manager who loves him, rather than someone loves him for who he is, for what he can do, what he can contribute to the team. And, these players sometimes, bump up against the same manager a number of times, as this Kendall sold him twice. Yeah, I guess, a maverick sort of player. Loved at so many clubs. At West Ham, he was absolutely celebrated as a great player. Was doing well at City until Kendall turned up. He must have thought, oh, my God, start packing your bags, Tiger. I'm out of here soon. But yeah, and, the daft thing about cutting your hair, I mean, for God's sake, grow up, Howard. Does it matter? Does it matter? I mean, I know they sort of have this discipline and image and that sort of thing, but you should quite do it on the park, then fine, leave it alone. Put his hair in curlers for all I care. If all the fans care, it doesn't really matter. Then again, he was successful in places where he was loved, where he was given appreciation, shall we say, rather than sort of trying to turn him into something that he wasn't. At Everton, after Kendall, if he'd have stayed after Kendall, if Kendall hadn't sold him, and perhaps he might have been the guy that could have made a difference for Colin Harvey's post-Kendall thing, because that didn't work perhaps for a number of reasons. Was he a better coach than the manager, Harvey? But I guess a player of that ability can always be the spark to, as he was, at Bournemouth, as you say, success at Bournemouth, success at West Ham, and even, there was a star at Carlisle in a lower league team. I think he's just one of these players who, if he'd have had the right manager when he was 19, 20, 21, he could have been a massive star. But he always seemed to be looking for that guy. I always say about managers, and some players look at managers who made them, it fitted, they felt loved, they felt honoured, they felt appreciated. I don't think Ian Bishop ever did, other than, say, at Bournemouth, perhaps at West Ham. It's a shame, really, because he had immense talent, but never really had the coaches, the managers he had, never really had the ability to tap into it.
Kind of the right man for Everton at the wrong time. He'd have been very much a Gordon Lee type of player. Gordon Lee, who was happy to embrace the likes of Duncan McKenzie, Dave Thomas, culture, skilled players.
It's a great call, Steve. A great call.
Howard Kendall may be a manager too late for Ian Bishop to prosper at Goodison. Robbie Wakenshaw, I'll throw his name into the mix there. He was the youngster that 15 minutes that Bishop got against Manchester United in May 1984. Robbie Wakenshaw made his debut that day as well. He made a massive splash. Scored Everton's goal in a 1-1 draw. So there's this wonder kid who I think he's a player for another podcast, another episode, another day. But interesting that Bishop's 15-minute window of opportunity in the Everton first team came on that day that Robbie Wakenshaw made himself such a cult figure at Everton, even to this day. But yes, Bishop at Everton, it could have been, well, what could have been, it really is, because he'd have brought something very, very different to the Everton midfield compared to Peter Reid, Paul Bracewell, Kevin Richardson, Stuart McCall to come. But he'd just certainly been a better option for the likes of Ian Wilson, Kevin Langley, Neil Adams, who all got first team opportunities at Goodison in the mid to late 1980s. Yeah, again, timing, absolutely everything. Moving south, we're going to go to Highbury. Clive Allen. It's head scratching all these years later. About 8 weeks, I think he was an Arsenal player. Made 3 appearances in pre-season friendlies. Signed by Terry Neal, £1.25 million. It was a massive outlay for him from QPR. Only 19. The vast majority of English football keeping a watchful eye, but not many willing to go to those kind of prices. Over double the amount that they've just received for Liam Brady from Juventus, which is just mind blowing in itself. But then there's a desire at the club to sign Kenny Sansom from Crystal Palace, and the only way to do that is to send Clive Allen in part exchange. Such a wild moment in English football by any era's standards. To sign this teenager for such a fee, the ideal partner for Frank Stapleton, really. There's already intimation that Frank Stapleton might want to be moving on. So A, as a partner, B, as the long-term successor to him. He's the ideal player for Arsenal at this point in time, for a team that has just lost both the FA Cup final and the European Cup Winners' Cup final on the back of 3 successive years of reaching the FA Cup final. Clive Allen and Arsenal, considering what might have been with Clive Allen in an Arsenal shirt.
I remember this so well because there was a big furore, as you say, when he signed, and Arsenal had been trying to sign Kenny Sansom, and Crystal Palace didn't want to sell him, and this signing came in. You thought, okay, that sounds like a decent signing, and all of a sudden he's gone. Never even played a first-team game. Well, not a league game. He played pre-season, as you mentioned. And then you think afterwards, was this always the plan? Was this sort of that they realised that, or was the conversation with Palace say, well, we might swap him for a decent player, part exchange for a decent player? I mean, in fairness, when you look at what happened afterwards, both players prospered. Kenny Sansom obviously became a regular fixture for Arsenal. Did so well, one of the best fullbacks in English football of recent times. And then Clive Allen went on Palace, and then obviously to Tottenham, and it was great success. And Arsenal were perhaps losing out in the forward line, as you say. Stapleton was a little bit over the top past his peak, and they signed other players that didn't perhaps work. I remember they signed Lee Chapman afterwards, and I think Lee Chapman scored something like 3 league goals, and then they sold him for a decent loss. And went to, I think, was it Sunderland they went to, and scored a handful of goals for Sunderland. And I asked them, what are we doing here, guys? What are we doing here? And then never really worked out, although they did come up at the time to Paul Mariner after to was successful, and perhaps Tony Woodcock as well. But yeah, it was a really weird one, that was. That I don't know if Arsenal really had planned to keep him. Was it just part of a set-up deal, a bit of an elaborate deal? I don't know. It sounds weird to say it now looking back, but at the time, that's what struck me as being perhaps in my naivety as a football fan, it looked like a plan.
It was one of the most peculiar ones. Along with Lee Chapman in the years to follow, Arsenal would sign Tony Woodcock, Paul Mariner, Charlie Nicholas. Varying degrees of success and failure. Injuries would play a part as well in that for Paul Mariner in particular. Allen would go on to score goals aplenty for Palace. A second spell at QPR, inclusive of going to the 1982 FA Cup final and then on to Tottenham. He played for England. Interesting pivot for Arsenal is 82-83. They reached the semi-finals of both the FA Cup and the Milk Cup and lose both to Manchester United. Allen, surely a striker that could have made a difference in one or even both of those cup runs for Arsenal in 82-83.
Perhaps. I mean, was that ever the plan? I mean, I don't know. It's I hate conspiracy theories. Did man land on the moon? But it just seems weird that you sign a player and then change your mind. That actually no, what we meant to do was sign a fullback rather than a forward, and you let him go. I mean, to lay out, and we're not talking about laying out 20 grand here. It was what, $1.25 million, was it, something like that?
$1.25 million.
It just seems crazy to lay that sort of money. Then four pre-season games, and I don't know how many weeks of training. Not that many. Change your mind. Oh no, it's not a striker we need. It's a fullback. It just beggars belief, doesn't it? Really.
It is. It's quite unreal. Quite unreal.
Yeah.
Staying at Arsenal, staying at Highbury. Martin Keown kind of makes it, but doesn't in this for the first coming of Martin Keown at Arsenal. He does play 22 league games for. So this is one who plays more than any of the other players. With the clubs mentioned, but there's caveats to it. He'd come through the same Arsenal youth system as Tony Adams, Michael Thomas, David Rocastle. Such a prolific youth system at Arsenal at that point in time. He makes his debut November '85 as a 19-year-old. Don Howe's the manager who thinks a lot of him, and he does play regular all the way up to the end. The remainder of the '85-'86 season. Summer of '86, however, Howe has left. Terry Venables has been approached over replacing him. He doesn't know about this, and Howe said, "Right, that's it, I'm off." And a certain George Graham is employed in the summer of '86 as Arsenal's new manager, and he's of the decision that Keown can go. He wants a new contract. The club itself seemed to want to give him a new contract. And Graham seems to be the rock and hard place in between. Keown's offered a new contract, but there's parity in his contract. There's no increase. He's asking for an extra £50 a week, which is not back. And he's sold to Aston Villa for £125,000. Tony Adams is hovering, as far as George Graham is concerned, and he's happy to sacrifice Martin Keown, given that David O'Leary and Tommy Caton are still knocking around as well. Yet, and this is the stunning part of it for me, he returns to Arsenal in February 1993 to great effect, serves them massively well in his second spell with Arsenal. But George Graham, the very same manager that sold him for £125,000, pays out £2 million to bring him back to Highbury in February 1993, via 3.5 years at Everton. In between the selling of Keown and the bringing him back to Arsenal, Graham goes out and he signs Steve Bold, Colin Pates and Andy Linegan for more than a combined £2 million. And Bold serves the club very well, undoubtedly. Pates and Linegan maybe less so, although Linegan does score an FA Cup winning goal. Effectively, Keown's departure and return from Arsenal costs more than £4 million in total. The money that they've got to pay out to get him back, the money that they've paid out on alternative central defenders in his absence. Arsenal do well for themselves 1986 through 1993 without Martin Keown. There's league titles, there's FA Cup success, League Cup successes. They don't miss him, but this is a peculiar set of circumstances, this one.
So weird, Steve. This is so weird. I mean, you look back at Arsenal now and you can't imagine a more George Graham defender, unless you say Tony Adams, than Martin Keown. I mean, talk about fitting in a system like hand in a glove. I mean, yeah, this guy's in place. He's played regularly under Don Howe, as you say, and you think, okay, O'Leary's coming to the end of his career. He's not going to go now. But this guy, unless, I don't know, perhaps Graham was just keen on spending more money, God knows, and bringing his own sort of type of players in. But, then again, you flog this guy for 125 grand. I mean, I guess there's success that Arsenal had at this time anyway. So they did well. They won trophies, but they brought him back not that long afterwards. I mean, we're talking 10 years down the road for £2 million. Now, it was a mistake that was costly to rectify because Keown, now the Arsenal back four, everybody can do it. And Keown's part of it. It's not Andy Linegan. You don't say Andy Linegan in the back four. You don't say Colin Pates. Steve Bold was in there for a while. But Keown was the guy who played a long time alongside Tony Adams as well as the key Arsenal back four. And it just seems such a strange decision. I mean, when I said we talked about Dave Watson earlier at Liverpool, and I didn't think he was a Liverpool defender. He wasn't a defender for that manager at that team at that time. Martin Keown was. He absolutely fitted in there square peg in a square hole. It just seems such a strange thing. And, we've talked about players that Man United, let's slip to Everton, let's slip to Liverpool, let's slip. And this seems the strangest one of all. That, it wasn't that difficult to see that this guy would fit into a defence. And then the blue money trying to replace him. I have to pay him back again afterwards for a ridiculous amount of money lost. But, there you go. You look back and, and they were successful. How much more successful could they have been if they'd have played Keown and Adams together for a decent period of time? It became the established partnership that they lost away for 2 years, 3 years, 3.5 years. How much more could they have won in that time with that partnership? And it just seemed a strange one to have. I don't know. I mean, perhaps it was a situation where the contract he wanted, the contract they were prepared to offer, the gap was too wide. But it just seemed a strange situation. The money you could have saved by giving him a contract that would have kept him at the club rather than blowing out a net £4 million to get him back eventually and rectify the mistake.
Yeah, part of that it's the redirecting of that cash, and just who they could have bought in other positions is absolutely unreal. But yeah, it's he did play 20 odd games in an Arsenal shirt the first time around, but it is that such a wild thing that to sell him £125,000 and bring him back for £2 million. It's kind of like it's era's kind of like Paul Pogba moment with Manchester United, cutting him free for peanuts and then bringing him back for the best part of £100 million.
And then losing him again.
Absolutely unreal. Remaining in London but moving east, Ray Houghton. Worked his way through the West Ham youth ranks. Signed as a professional at Upton Park in the summer of 1979. But for the next 3 years, he's restricted to just one first-team appearance, held back by the emergence of fellow youth product Paul Allen. In a similar way to Kevin Sheedy at Liverpool, maybe, Houghton would have to look elsewhere for regular first-team football. But even during an injury-disrupted season for Allen in 1980-81, still Houghton's chance didn't come. Midfield competition for places further muddied, however, by Trevor Brooking, Jeff Pike, Alan Devonshire, Pat Holland, Jimmy Neighbour, Bobby Barnes, rising Alan Dickens, and West Ham, properly blindside for John Lyall here. It's not just that Houghton doesn't make it at West Ham; it's that he's handed a free transfer in the summer of '82, picked up by Malcolm McDonald at Fulham, who within weeks is turning round to John Lyall and saying, "Have you got any more free transfers like that?" Because he hits the ground running at Craven Cottage, second division. Fulham at this point in time, who have designs on promotion to the first division. A few years at Fulham, eventually moves on to Oxford United in the summer of '85, helps them to win the League Cup or the Milk Cup, as we should call it, in '86, before eventually in October 1987 move to Liverpool. Dalglish swoops for £825,000. Houghton turns down Arsenal and Celtic, among other suitors, some even continental sides. 85-86 fascinates me, that juxtaposition there, that crossing. He's not been a West Ham player for 3 years by the time the 85-86 season starts, but you look at how good he was for Oxford that season and that League Cup winning season. That's the year that West Ham are the third wheel in that incredible title race with Liverpool and Everton. They finished third, only a few points short. They also reached the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. They're in the hunt for one of three teams in the hunt for the double that season. Just what Houghton could have been as part of that West Ham side in 85-86.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about players who were sort of sold by the clubs who they didn't consider to be a regular first team option, perhaps, and took the bid. This guy was given away. He was released. He was given a free transfer. He wasn't sold. He was given a free transfer. And whether it was McDonald or the Fulham scouting staff who sort of said, "This is a guy, pick him up." I mean, a great move for Fulham and a great move for Houghton. Reignited his career. Then he went to Oxford and absolutely flourished at Oxford and became, they had sort of 2 or 3 years where they were, a really decent team. And then, of course, Dalglish, as you say, Poundstone paid £825,000 for a player West Ham had released a few years ago for a bugger all, and became a key player for Liverpool. The West Ham releasing him was a boon to Houghton's career. But as you say, looking a few years down the road, when West Ham was sort of in the title shake-up for a while, could a player like Houghton have made the difference there? Certainly the Houghton who played for Liverpool would, and even the Houghton who played for Oxford would surely have been a first-team player for West Ham. And okay, I guess, we've spoken in the past about timing of players being released. Perhaps this is just a little bit, perhaps like when Atkinson at Liverpool didn't recognise Atkinson at Liverpool, so forgive me, Atkinson at Man United didn't recognise the talents of how to draw the best out of players like Beardsley and Platt. Perhaps Lyall didn't see how to draw the best talent because the guy obviously had the talent, as he went on to prove afterwards. And would he have made that much difference to West Ham afterwards? He would have made that difference. Would it have been enough to swing a an unlikely title, realistic title challenge. Who can say, but he would certainly have been a key regular first-team player. You have to believe the guy who played at Oxford so successfully and then at Liverpool was surely been an important asset for West Ham.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, one of those, all of those that we've discussed today. Oh, fascinating, kind of like sliding doors players, without a shadow of a doubt.
What could have been?
What could have been. Moving on to our and finally section. This is a new one for Gary. Gary's never experienced an and finally section before, but you're going to have to get used to these if you're coming back from
okay.
Gary.
That's okay.
Ray Houghton made his one and only first-team appearance for West Ham as a second-half substitute at Highbury against Arsenal on Saturday the 1st of May 1982. That night's TV, and we'll go for the afternoon as well, the differences between Grandstand and World of Sport first, I think. Anything that's particularly catching your eye? Okay, so Grandstand, both of these, Grandstand and World of Sport are on at 12:15. They've strategically gone straight into each other. Unsatisfyingly, Football Focus at 12:20 is head to head with On the Ball. They've not split the two, so we can't watch one and then the other. Which are you going for? Are you going for Football Focus with Bob Wilson, or On the Ball with Ian St. John?
I guess I'd probably go BBC. I guess just because
lack of advert, isn't it?
Yeah, but there is that was a big thing. Yeah, On the Ball was a sort of a relatively new thing. Football Focus. I mean, Grandstander obviously was going a long time before World Sport came along. So I guess it was for On the Ball to purloin viewers from Football Focus. So yeah, I think I'll probably go Football Focus.
You're going Football Focus, okay. Okay, for the remainder of the afternoon, the BBC is showing World Professional Snooker Championships from the Crucible. There is World Ice Hockey Championships. There's Rugby League between Hull and Widnes. Final score interspersed with racing from Haydock. While World of Sport are offering 10-pin bowling, the Tournament of Champions from Ohio. They are offering Speedway, more coverage from the USA. Half-time scores, the results service, but also a raft of racing, horse racing from Kempton and Newmarket, the ITV6,
ITV6
was known, which I think they brought back in modern times. Which, not being a horse fanatic, even I know of the ITV6. What's Grandstand or World of Sport for the rest of the day after Football Focus?
I think Grandstand. I was quite partial to Rugby League, and ice hockey. Well, there's goals in ice hockey anyway, so that was okay. I think
Widnes are playing there, and that's a bit of a needle match against Hull, I think.
Yeah, I can't imagine me watching horse racing. I mean, it's not really my bag. So yeah, I think I'd be.
I think that's even the Challenge Cup final. That one, Gavin. I reckon it's not saying so on the TV guide that's in front of me.
Yeah. I quite like it. And I remember when Widnes signed a lot of. This was after that. They signed a lot of former rugby union players like Jonathan Davis.
They did.
Tates and
Martin
Fire. They were great entertainment in those days. Yeah, but I think I'd be Rugby League. I can't be dealing with horse racing.
Yeah, absolutely. I had we were switching over to World of Sport when the horse racing's on. Definitely, and then flick back. I think
flick back.
Okay, moving into the evening. Okay, your television viewing. Beyond Pop Quiz on BBC One at 5:45. With this week's contestants, including Phil Collins of Genesis and Bill Bruford of Free. Mike Reid as the presenter, obviously. There's the film Mayday, 40,000 Feet from 1976. Mastermind Champions, 10-year celebration of one of the unlikeliest of TV successes. All 10 champions returning for a face-off under the cold eye of Magnus Magnusson. The Val Doonican Music Show. Our best model of fancy sweaters returns with his relaxed mix of pop and country style. Guests include Ray Charles, Barbara Dixon, and inevitably, it seems, Dennis Waterman. This is followed by Dynasty, one more American saga about the rich, powerful, and nasty, which claims to make Dallas look cozy. Among its attractions is a lady called Fallon, whose life is spent wandering the world, seducing as many men as possible. And then following the news, it's Match of the Day. BBC Two is offering you Crazy Dreams, open door programme about a Stoke-on-Trent group attempting to convert a derelict warehouse into a multiracial arts centre. This is followed by Did You See, presented by Ludwig Kennedy. Washington Behind Closed Doors, kind of an hour and a half worth of American politics by the sound of it. Further action from the World Snooker Championships and highlights of the rugby union final of the day, Gloucester versus Mosley. This is followed by Mosley. This is followed by Man Alive. An examination of Britain's war readiness includes a rare look behind the scenes as our troops take part in a realistic exercise, all very Falklands-esque at that point in time. While ITV, you've got Wurzel Gummidge, Buck Rogers in the 21st century, 3-2-1, with Ted Rogers, the theme this week being Railways, Playing with Train, Derek Geiler, Ray Allen. This is followed by a film called Last of Sheila from 1973 and a program called Jerusalem's Army After the War. It's got to be the BBC, hasn't it, really, hasn't it, after, with all that?
Yeah, I've listened to that. I mean, I remember, so 1982, are we say?
We are, May 1982.
I'll be 25. So we used to watch, me and the missus watch pop quiz. We'd sort of definitely sort of watch pop quiz and sort of see how good we were, how bad we were. Mastermind, definitely would have been Mastermind. I'd definitely watch that. Similar reason, Match of the Day, obviously. Washington behind closed door. Sorry, go on, mate.
Yes, it's just the Val Doonican show and dinner scene.
Oh, yeah, I can't do with that.
That's the problem there.
Yeah, sitting in his rocking chair with his guitar, singing I don't know what. Washington behind closed doors sounds interesting. Perhaps Man Alive as well. But, yeah, I think BBC wins again. I mean, I think so.
3-2-1 will probably be on now. I also remember that being on a lot. The mind-bending clues that were handed over there.
It's actually kind of Ted Rogers was on holiday in Spain, and he saw 3-2-1 was originally a Spanish television program, and he saw it. Well, that's a great idea. Went back and sold it to the producers. Yeah, so it's on holiday. Yeah,
absolutely fantastic.
And cursed the British public for a while afterwards.
A nugget of gold television information there. Next up, Kevin Sheedy scored the second of his 2 goals in a Liverpool shirt in the Milk Cup third round tie at Anfield against Middlesbrough on the 10th of November 1981. Back page headlines, footballing news of interest. Billy Bonds is urging Ron Greenwood to bank on Alan Devonshire. Greenwood is to name his England squad for the upcoming crucial World Cup qualifier at Wembley against Hungary. Ray Hankin is saying yes to a move as Vancouver Whitecaps are accepting more money for Vancouver Whitecaps. It's Arsenal coming in for Ray Hankin at this point in time. And intriguingly, there's a players' campaign on the go to end the £1 million transfer, the obscenity of the £1 million transfer, Gary. This is the players themselves, 2 decades on from the abolition of the maximum wage. Now it's the players who are the moral compass here, saying that you can't be selling us for £1 million and that needs to be outlawed. That it didn't take off, that one, Gary.
No, I think those are the days before agents got involved and said, I want a 10% cut off the magic fee that I can get and pushes the fees higher and higher. I mean, yeah, that one fell by the wayside rather quickly. Interesting one about Vancouver Whitecaps.
Yeah, they're really coining it in, aren't they?
There again, recruitment guys earned his salary. That's time. Yeah, I remember Tony Waiters was coach over there for a while. I think they won the NASL when he was there. But great dinners to Vancouver Whitecaps. Incidentally, I don't know if I read about this. I was an article about Tony Waiters at Vancouver, and they're called the Whitecaps. I always thought because it's the mountains, but it's actually the white tip of a wave.
Oh,
that's okay. Because their badge at the time had a wave with the surf.
That's right.
That's why they're called Whitecaps. I didn't know that. So that's a good one.
Yeah, more education.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this, Gary. 3-2-1 was a Spanish game show that Ted Rogers robbed off with, and yeah.
Yeah, more to come, mate. More to come. Right, the Devonshire one's interesting. There's a player who, for so long, was sold as being the new Trevor Booking, and never really was. And I remember the game, the home qualifier. That's the guy when I think Paul Mariner scored. England only did draw and Paul Mariner scored. I think that's right. But Devonshire never really attained the heights. There again, it's somebody who sort of what it could have been, but never really attained the heights. The new Trevor Booking, he always faded when you called the new George Best and the new anybody. Don't be the new anybody. be the first of you who you are. So to carry that tag, it's difficult.
Absolutely. A fine player, Alan Devonshire as well.
He was,
Fine player. He did actually win his call-up for that game as well. He was part of that England squad against Hungary.
I'm not sure Billy Bonds was that persuasive.
No, Billy Bonds, his ship had sailed.
Yeah.
Ian Bishop made his only first-team appearance, as mentioned, May 1984, 15 minutes, replacing the cult figure of Robbie Wakenshaw in that 1-1 draw with Manchester United at Goodison Park. I sent you a link.
You did.
The top 40 that day, Gary. Did you manage to take a look at it? If so, what's attracting your attention to record illegally off the radio? You're ready with the play and record button. You need to stop it before the DJ
cuts in.
The end of the song.
I guess by this time I was 28, so I was probably past that sort of thing. But I did do that when
you're never too old.
Never too old to do it. No,
illegally record.
We'll pick 3 songs out that were in there. I mean, Bob Marley, "One Love." That we still play that when we play music, whatever, in dinner or something. We still that great song. Watched the film
number 9. Yep.
Yeah, watched the film quite recently as well. A really good film of a biopic of Marley. And the other one, it's not particularly a great song, but it's one of those songs that gets stuck in your head and more putting your foot loose. I can sing it now, just the songs that sort of stick in your head. So there was that. But the one that really sticks out for me was the Frankies, "Relax." At this time, our daughter, Megan, was 3, and she could sing it. But because of the links it had to sort of different things, and she'd sing it in public. She'd be going, "Relax down." I had to keep stopping her singing. It was quite embarrassing, but yeah, she always picked up on songs very quickly. I mean, it's the sort of area where I guess it was Karma Chameleon, and for years we had to sing and sleep singing Karma Chameleon. Even today, it's one of my favourite songs of all time. So yeah, it's funny how songs stick in your head. I'm saying that Kenny Loggins one, but the Frankies one particularly.
Oh yeah, that's it. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, other honourable mentions. I'll get into number 28 that Footloose was at this week. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's often kind of like songs that are down the charts rather than up the charts. But Relax is at number 31 at this point. It's been in the charts for 26 weeks. A former number 1. But Silver by Echo and the Bunnymen at number 30 for me. Yeah, definitely a bit of Echo and the Bunnymen for me there. I think I'd probably go for a little bit of... Yeah, I'm going to go for "You Take Me Up" by the Thompson Twins. Number 10. There's a bit of a stormer.
Echo and the Bunnymen are an interesting one as well, because people used to think that the singer was named Echo, and of course it wasn't. Echo was a drum machine. Yeah,
absolutely. Reflex is number 1 this week.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which is a bit of a classic itself.
In its own way.
And moving on to our last one, David Platt signs for Crewe Alexandra on the 23rd of February 1985, following being handed a free transfer by Ron Atkinson, thrown on the scrap heap at Old Trafford. The link that I provided will take you to the February 1985 movie box office listings. What are you off to watch, Gary?
Well, we watch. I mean, there's some really good films on that list, and I remember
there is.
It was Valentine's Day. We went to watch Beverly Hills Cop at Warsaw, the old ABC at Warsaw, which has now been knocked down a long time ago. But while we were there, it was really weird because the film was running, and then the lights came on halfway through. What's going on there? This guy came out and said, "Just need to let you know, we've had a phone call about bomb scare," because these things are quite sort of prevalent at the time. There's been a bomb threat, so if anybody wants to leave, I understand if you want to stay. We think it's probably okay, but we have to tell you. And it was, "Shut up, put the film back on." Nobody left. It was a hoax as well. But that's one that sort of sticks in my mind from Beverly Hills Cop. It's a great film as well. I mean, we've seen it a couple of times since on Netflix, and they recently bought out an updated version.
They have. Yeah, I've not watched it yet, but I've got my eye on it for maybe for Christmas. Yeah.
We saw the first half.
Is it? All right.
Beverly Hills Cop's 27, I think it is. It's get a life, Eddie. But but that was a great first film we watched. Yeah,
excellent. Other big movies around at the time: Witness, The Killing Fields, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Passage to India, Tomboy. I remember Tomboy. I can't fully remember what it was about, but it does stick in the mind. The Breakfast Club. Yeah, Amadeus. A lot of Starman. There's a lot of Big the Cotton Club to 182. Yeah, a lot of options at the cinema at this point in time. The spoilt for choice, absolutely spoilt for choice. Gary, fantastic. Have you enjoyed your debut?
That was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. I love Chuck. I say there's nothing better than talking with mates about football. But I love the unfolding bit as well. That was great fun as well. Yeah. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it, mate. Grateful to be on board with the team, and look forward to our next chat on the Your Boys podcast, kiddo.
Get thinking for your next topic, and let me know as soon as you know what it is.
Boom.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Gary. This has been our latest module of Your Boys Took a Hell of a Beating. So go out, spread the word, enjoy. We'll be back with more 80s nonsense before too long. Please do join us again. Thank you and goodbye.